I find this very interesting. I never thought about this from this perspective. David, how can I keep my number of hives from growing? I'm new, but I don't want to get too large. Wow, that's usually the opposite of what I hear. I go to conferences. Sometimes people ask me, how do I grow my apiary? And if you look at videos on YouTube, most of them, if not all of them, are how to expand, how to make a split, right? So you can have 2 hives instead of 1. So most of the focus we see is about growing in numbers. That's really important to beekeepers. A lot of beekeepers really, that's bragging rights for a lot of beekeepers. I want to tell you today, hey, it's okay if you don't want to grow your apiary. You're okay, I understand. So it can be challenging sometimes when you start and think, I should be wanting to grow, but I don't want to. I want to keep it kind of small. So what do you do if you're the person that has done everything right and the stars have lined up perfectly and your bees have just exploded? You started with a hive, they swarmed, you caught it, now you got 2. Those 2 hives swarmed, now you got 4. The first year, you could be up to 5 or 8 hives and you're like, I can't really deal with this many bees. What do I do? We had a beekeeper once come to us and got so overwhelmed, and so her bees grew so fast that she came to us and said, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm getting burned out. It's overwhelming. Can you take all of this stuff? So I understand that. That's okay if you're in that situation. So stick with me in this video all the way to the end, because I'm going to give you tips on how you can ungrow your apiary and keep it where it's comfortable for you to enjoy. And if you like these kind of videos that I make, guys, please subscribe and give me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. So let's talk about some of the reasons why we may not want to grow our apiary. So let's just say we want to ungrow it, keep it from growing. A lot of times it's just because we have maybe a growing family. Maybe your family commitments are getting larger. I know there was a time when with 6 children, 13 grandchildren, even I feel sometimes the pressure of, I need to go out to that hive and do an inspection, but I got to go to a grandchild's birthday party, you know? And so there's a competition sometimes between family time and our bees. Other times, you know, most people that are keeping bees, not all, but a lot of people are in retirement, so they have aging parents. And so sometimes that means you have more commitments to your aging parents you got to take care of, and they may live far away. And so it's pulling you away from tending to a growing apiary. Another reason could be you're retiring. And a lot of people retire and get into beekeeping, but when you retire, that means you have more time for you, and maybe you're a snowbird, you're wanting to go south or out west somewhere, do things that you want to during retirement. You kind of don't want to be tied down to your bees sometimes, because then you're really not in retirement anymore. You just went from one job to becoming a full-time beekeeper. So that can add pressure on an expanding apiary too. Another reason is finances. I'm amazed at how much hives cost today. Take a look at this. Now, if you expand your apiary, like if you catch a swarm, you got to have equipment to put them in. Right here, $350 for a hive. Now it's kind of a bigger hive. You might get by without that extra super. But let's face it, if you get a hive and you do collect a lot of honey, you're going to need 2 supers. $350? That means if you expand just by 3 hives in 1 year, it's going to cost you $1,000. Now maybe you can make your own equipment, save a few bucks, but let's be honest, the more you expand, you're going to have more equipment costs. You may have to buy a bigger extractor. So you're going to be putting money into your expansion. Now, a lot of times we don't want to admit this, and I don't want to make you feel bad. I'll talk about myself so you don't feel bad. But as I get older, we don't always get more fit as we get older. And so physical limitations as we age can make it harder to have a growing apiary, because now instead of lifting 3 or 4 big heavy boxes, you know, during inspections, now we're lifting 10 heavy boxes during our inspection. Physical limitations, hey, it's okay. You need to say, I know what my limits are. 1 hive is good for me, 2 hives is good for me, and that's fine, that's all I want. And you're wondering, well, what do I do? I'm having swarms, I need to make splits. It is a problem in it. But I want to jump in here and just remind you, it's okay. Don't feel like you have to compete with others that have a lot more than you, and don't think that makes you a better beekeeper the more hives you have. That is not necessarily true. Another reason is maybe it's not suitable for your neighbors. You know, your neighbors are okay with one hive, but now they look out the window and they see you making another one and another one and another one, and they're like, whoa, what's going on over there? And that can freak out your neighbors. Another reason we may not want to grow our apiary is because maybe you live in Houston and you just got a job in Chicago. And you got to move, you know, so how are you going to move that hive or those hives? So the more hives you have, it makes it complicated if you have a job change. Maybe you love to travel. Maybe you're somebody that likes to go camping, hunting, fishing. You just have pretty busy activities going on all summer with your travels. And although you can leave, you know, for a while, but you might find that having a lot of hives prevents you from traveling as much as you want to. Another reason is city ordinances. Now, sometimes the city police may drive by and say, okay, you got one hive. That's what our city says. And then the next day they drive by, or next month, and you've got 5 hives. So you may be violating city ordinances. You want to check with that. Now, here's one that I often think about, and it's interesting because you really can't find an answer exactly to this question, but how many hives can my area support? I do get that asked a lot. You know, where I live, can I support 5 hives, 10 hives? And by that we mean that if you don't have a lot of nectar resources in your area, that one hive may get along fine, right? But then you add 2 or 10, and all those colonies are competing over the same patch of flowers. So you need to consider, you know, how does the limited flora resources in my area, how's that going to be affected when I add more hives? And finally, discouragement. That can be pretty tough. Now, what I mean by discouragement is maybe you lost a hive, and that's really discouraging. Or maybe you were keeping bees with a friend, and now that friend can't help you anymore. They were helping you make splits. They were kind of helping you deal with your hive swarming, and maybe they were helping you inspect and take care of the honey and all that, and now maybe they died or they moved away and you don't have them anymore, and it's all on you, and your hives are expanding. You can barely take care of what you got. So these are reasons why you really need to consider holding back if it's overwhelming. And let me give you some tips now on what you can do to keep your apiary, I love this, keep it from growing. So I'm excited to deal with this because it's kind of like a different subject, right? How not to grow your apiary. You just wouldn't ever think that would be something that people are interested in, but it is. So let me give you some tips. Now, some of you may be overwintering a hive and you're excited that the one hive made it through winter. It was a lot of work last year. And now you're going to deal with that hive swarming. And like I said earlier, it may swarm into 2 hives. It may swarm twice. You may grow to 4 hives this year. And that may be 3 more than you want. So here's some tips on what you can do if you don't want to grow your apiary. Number 1 is swarm prevention. So in other words, if you have 1 hive, you can always keep it at 1 hive. Now, there are a lot of swarm prevention techniques that are I've made videos on. There's a Demarest method of swarm prevention. You can just simply be very vigilant about going out to your hive as a new beginner maybe, or maybe experienced, but you need to go out there and check for swarm cells. And then you will just simply remove those as long as your mother queen is still there. And you won't let them swarm because they don't have the queens to swarm. They swarm with the old queen, but they raise new queens. So they won't swarm if you're removing their swarm cells. So it takes more labor, it's more labor intense, but having 2 hives is a lot more labor intense. So this may be a way for you to control your swarms is through swarm management. I do have an online spring management course, and it does talk about swarm control. And since we're getting into spring, and if you don't want to expand, even if you do, you need to know how to capitalize on your hives expanding in the spring. Now, another way that you can ungrow or keep your colonies from expanding in your apiary is that you can make splits. And I've made a lot of videos here on YouTube about making splits, but the simplest way is to take 4 or 5 frames from that gigantic overwintered colony that, congratulations, you did so well getting through the winter. But now you need to do something. You take out 5 of the frames which have brood on them and some eggs, larvae brood, you know, and then some resources like honey or nectar, and the old queen, the original queen there. Take those frames and move them into a 5-frame nuke box. And now you can sell that or give it away to somebody that's getting started into beekeeping. That will keep your hive from making another one. And so that will retain that one hive that you like. Now, some of you have 2 hives and you want to keep it as 2 hives. Same principle applies. Make 2 splits from, 1 split from each. So now you have 2 nucleuses, and that you can sell those, maybe some sidelining money for you, or give them to a friend to get started as well. Now you may be asking, well, how do I get in contact with people that want a nucleus? You can go onto Facebook groups on beekeeping. You can contact people in your area that are beekeepers that may know others that are wanting to get into beekeeping. You know, there's always Craigslist, there's always bee clubs, there's a lot of places that are just, you can just stick a note up somewhere at the farm store, you know, free bees, like free kittens. But yeah, it's pretty easy. People will find out pretty quickly once you get the word out that you have a nucleus that you'd like to sell or give away. It's okay. Again, I want to stress the importance. Just don't get into beekeeping and be competitive with the numbers. You keep the number of bees that you feel comfortable with and you enjoy. That's the main thing. Now, if you are wanting more tips on controlling swarms in the spring, that's what we're getting ready to face now that we're coming out of winter. I've made several videos on making splits, and here's one right over here. I want you guys to watch it. Follow me over here. I'll see you there.